Welcome, students. We are going to discuss the last part of the present chapter, that is a triumph of surgery. In the previous part, we have seen that the narrator, or we can say doctor, and his partners had enjoyed luxurious life. Mrs. Pumphrey had given several things for Tricky, but these things were enjoyed by doctor and his partner. Later on, we saw that the information of Tricky's recovery was given to Mrs. Pumphrey, and finally Pumphrey came to collect Tricky. When she came, then doctor said, "Okay, you remain here. I will go and fetch Tricky." After that, you see here, I carried him back along the passage to the front of the house. So finally, doctor carried Tricky to the front of the house. The chauffeur was still holding the car door open, and when Tricky saw his mistress, he took off from my arms in a tremendous leap. Leap here means jump, and sailed into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. So simply here we can say, when Tricky saw his mistress, what was his reaction? His reaction was that he left doctor and moved towards his mistress, that is Mrs. Pumphrey. She gave a startled. Startled means feeling or showing sudden shock or alarm. Oh, and then had to defend herself as he swarmed. Swarmed here means moved somewhere in large numbers over her, licking her face and barking. So here, especially in this paragraph, we have seen the reaction of Tricky when he saw his mistress. Tricky was brought before Mrs. Pumphrey by the doctor. The doctor himself brought Tricky before Mrs. Pumphrey. Tricky was very excited. Tricky left doctor's arm and moved towards Mrs. Pumphrey. Tricky also showed his love towards his mistress. So this is the part of the present paragraph. इस पैराग्राफ में हम यही देखते हैं कि किस तरह से ट्रिकी मिसेस पम्फ्री के सामने लाया जाता है, और जब ट्रिकी पम्फ्री के सामने आता है तो उसका रिएक्शन क्या रहता है, वो इस पैराग्राफ में बताया गया है. Okay, so that is the part we have discussed. See, next. During the excitement, I helped the chauffeur to bring out the beds, because there were beds for Tricky. Now these beds were collected. Toys, cushions, coats, and bowls, and none of which had been used. So these things were given by Mrs. Pumphrey to the doctor in order to give comfort to Tricky. But these things were not used by the doctor, and when Tricky was moving towards his house, moving towards his mistress, then the chauffeur collected beds, toys, cushions, coats, and bowls. And these things were not used by the doctor. As the car moved away, as the car moved away, Mrs. Pumphrey leaned out of the window, tears shone in her eyes. Her lips trembled. "Oh, Mr. Harriet," she cried, "how can I ever thank you? This is a triumph of surgery. This is a triumph of surgery." So, here, especially in this paragraph, we have seen the reaction of Mrs. Pumphrey when she was moving towards her house with her Tricky. We have also seen that what the things were given to Tricky in the hospital by Mrs. Pumphrey. These things were collected by Saufer. These things include beds, toys, cushions, coats, and bowls. And remember, doctor had not used all these things for Tricky. And when the car was moving towards Mrs. Pumphrey's house, then there were tears in the eyes of Mrs. Pumphrey. Her lips were trembling. She thanked the doctor for this sort of treatment. This dog, Tricky, had become energetic. He had got his strength again. He looked beautiful. He looked handsome. His appearance became attractive, impressive. It happened only because of the treatment which was given by Dr. Harriet. Okay, and lastly, Mr. Pumphrey says this is a triumph of surgery. It is a victory of surgery. So, this is the whole part of this present lesson, that is a triumph of surgery. And Mrs. Pumphrey became happy after getting Tricky. And Tricky now had regained his strength, his good health. Okay, so this is the part. So in the whole chapter we have seen what sort of treatment had been given by the doctor, how Tricky was treated at the hospital. Okay, we have also seen the meeting between Mrs. Pumphrey and Tricky. When they met, how they reacted. These things we have discussed in this lesson. Okay. Thank you.